She thought the White House podium made her untouchable, until one press briefing triggered an $80 million, 0 cents lawsuit that could destroy her forever. When Karoline Leavitt mocked Jasmine Crockett on live TV, she didn't just cross a line, she lit the fuse. What did Crockett uncover that made even Leavitt's allies go silent? Keep watching. Before we get to this explosive moment, tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe truth still matters, hit subscribe. We've got another jaw-dropping story coming tomorrow. The White House press briefing room buzzed with the usual hum of reporters tapping on laptops, lights flickering above and cameras rolling. Karoline Leavitt stood at the podium, sharp in her signature blue suit, flipping through notes with the confidence of someone who believed she had already won. The room settled. A reporter from the Washington Post raised her hand. Ms. Leavitt, could you clarify the administration's stance on Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's voting rights bill? Leavitt didn't hesitate. Her smile tightened. She's just another ambulance-chasing activist playing the victim card, she said, her voice laced with disdain. The room went silent. Reporters exchanged stunned glances. Someone audibly gasped. Another muttered, "Did she just say that?" Leavitt looked unfazed, flipping her folder shut. "We'll leave it there today," she said, stepping back. The briefing ended in chaos. Phones lit up across the room. Editors were already calling. Within hours, the clip had gone viral, millions watching the moment where arrogance turned into catastrophe. 48 hours later, the headlines dropped like bombs. Great Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett files $80 million, 0 cents, lawsuit against Karoline Leavitt for defamation and civil rights violations. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all carried the same explosive headline. Social media detonated with outrage, disbelief, and celebration. On Capitol Hill, Crockett stood firm. This isn't about feelings. This is about power being abused, rights being violated, and lies being weaponized from the highest podium in the land. Cameras flashed. Journalists scrambled. The youngest press secretary in American history had vanished from public view. The questions flooded in. What did Jasmine Crockett know? What evidence did she have? And how did one sentence, delivered with smug confidence, unravel a rising conservative icon's entire career? To understand how this confrontation shattered Karoline Leavitt's future, we have to rewind. Jasmine Crockett grew up on the south side of Dallas, where the city's dividing lines weren't just drawn on maps, they were carved into daily life. Her mother worked double shifts at a county hospital. Her father picked up whatever hours he could, and Jasmine learned early that the rules never bent for people who couldn't afford lawyers. She watched classmates disappear into a justice system that treated poverty like guilt. She watched neighborhoods suffocate under bad policy and worse policing, and she decided she wasn't going to beg that system for respect, she was going to force it to give it. School at the University of Houston wasn't glamorous. It was survival. She clerked by day, studied by night, and argued mock trials like they were life and death, because someday, for her clients, they would be. When offers arrived from corporate firms with corner offices and expense accounts, she turned them down. Instead, she chose the fluorescent lights and cramped hallways of civil rights litigation, representing families who had lost sons to police shootings, tenants poisoned by neglect, and workers silenced for speaking up. She didn't chase headlines. She chased accountability. Court quickly learned that when Crockett stood, she filed the system. Open card in 3 places, her facts, timelines, and trapdoors. Opposing counsel learned never to confuse her composure for softness. Reporters learned her favorite word was receipts. When she won multi-million-dollar settlements for clients the system had written off, she didn't celebrate on talk shows. She filed the next complaint. Congress came calling because her community demanded it. She ran on a promise to turn legal skill into legislative power. On Capitol Hill, she built a reputation not with outrage clips, but with cross-examinations that landed like indictments. She didn't waste time performing. She prepared. She didn't insult. She documented. In hearings, executives and officials tried to patronize her. That ended the moment she opened her binder. And still, the establishment underestimated her, again and again. They called her emotionally driven, too aggressive, too sharp. They misread calm for concession and clarity for vulnerability. Karoline Leavitt made the same mistake. She thought she was stepping into a media fight. Jasmine Crockett knew she was stepping into a courtroom, whether Leavitt realized it or not. When Leavitt crossed the line at the White House podium, Crockett didn't tweet back. She drafted, she filed, she executed. And that's why the lawsuit landed like a gavel. Karoline Leavitt was built for the camera. Blonde, poised, and media-trained to strike, she rose through the conservative ecosystem like a rocket. From college comms rooms to green rooms at Fox News, she mastered the art of the viral, hit-snapping at reporters, embarrassing liberal guests, slicing up talking points with soundbite-ready venom. One viral takedown of a Hollywood actor turned her into a star. Overnight, donors loved her, influencers amplified her, and party strategists saw her as the future. Gen Z, disciplined on message, loyal to Trump to the decimal. Then they handed her the White House podium. It should have been the moment she learned restraint. Instead, it became the accelerant for her worst instincts. The job wasn't just about defending policy. It was about wielding authority with discipline. But Karoline treated the podium like a studio desk. Every question, an opponent, every answer, and attack. The press corps learned to expect combat, not clarity. And behind the scenes, aides whispered about her refusal to stick to carefully vetted briefs. If there was a gut-feel jab to be thrown, she'd throw it, on live TV, from the seal-backed podium of the presidency. Which is why Jasmine Crockett's name triggered not caution but temptation. Leavitt saw an opportunity to score points, to signal to the base, to paint a black congresswoman and former civil rights lawyer as a professional victim. She didn't research Crockett's record. She didn't weigh the legal implications of speaking falsely from an official platform. She didn't consider the federal protections Crockett enjoyed while performing her legislative duties. She swung and left her entire career exposed. Her downfall wasn't a single sentence. It was a pattern. Off-screen, bravado, personal insults disguised as policy critique, a belief that if you won the clip, you won the fight. It worked when her opponent was a celebrity. It failed catastrophically when her opponent was a lawyer with a spine, a strategy, and a stack of documented evidence. When the $80 million, 0 cents lawsuit landed, Karoline tried the same playbook: dismiss, mock, double down. But this wasn't cable news. This was federal court. And in federal court, every insult has a statute, every reckless claim has a cost, and every leaked email, especially the one where she wrote "make stuff up if you have to," becomes an exhibit that ends careers. Karoline Leavitt wasn't destroyed by a scandal. She was destroyed by believing she could say anything, anywhere, about anyone, and never have to answer for it. Jasmine Crockett made sure she did. The White House press briefing room was packed, shoulder to shoulder with reporters, cameras flashing, anticipation thick in the air. Karoline Leavitt stepped up to the podium in her trademark navy suit, smiling with the confidence of someone who had crushed her opponents before and fully expected to do it again. She flipped through her binder, scanning pre-cleared talking points. But the question that would define her career wasn't in the binder. It came from Sarah Chen of the Washington Post, sharp as ever. "Ms. Leavitt, can you clarify why the administration is opposing Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's new voting rights bill? There seems to be growing concern that the opposition may be personal." Leavitt didn't blink. Her smirk widened as if she'd been waiting for this. "Congresswoman Crockett claims to care about voting rights," she began, voice coated in sarcasm. "But she's really just another angry activist playing the victim card. Her so-called civil rights work? It's glorified ambulance chasing, lawsuits for profit, not justice." The room shifted uncomfortably. Even the conservative-leaning outlets stopped typing. But Leavitt kept going. She's built her brand on grievance politics and racial division. She wants to be seen as some kind of freedom fighter, but let's be honest. What has she actually done, besides scream about injustice and collect checks? I don't see legislation. I see a resume padded with courtroom theatrics. The moment was already a disaster, but then she crossed the one line that could never be uncrossed. And frankly, Levitt added, leaning into the microphone. Congresswoman Crockett's qualifications speak for themselves. She got elected because she fits a narrative, not because she's capable. Look at her record. Look at her background. Look at her. Gasps. No one moved. Reporters looked around, unsure whether they had just heard what they thought they heard. The cameras were still rolling. A stunned silence fell over the room, interrupted only by the soft clicking of shutters, capturing the moment her arrogance crossed into full-blown personal attack. The briefing was over, not officially, but spiritually. No final statement, no clarifications, just Karoline Levitt walking off stage with the swagger of someone who still thought she'd won. Within minutes, Twitter exploded. Prophet defamed. White House smear. Clips of the briefing circulated like wildfire. Commentators across the political spectrum demanded accountability. But Jasmine Crockett didn't tweet. She didn't rant. She didn't call a press conference. She called her lawyers. While the nation debated Karoline Levitt's comments, Jasmine Crockett wasn't wasting time on outrage. She was assembling her legal arsenal. Within 48 hours of the now infamous press briefing, Crockett emerged from behind closed doors flanked by a high-powered team of civil rights attorneys. She wasn't here to make noise. She was here to make history. The press conference was held on the Capitol steps, symbolic, deliberate, and surgical in its tone. Reporters waited in tense silence as Crockett approached the podium, holding a thick manila folder in one hand and calm, unshakable poise in the other. This isn't about personal insult, she began, her voice measured but full of righteous clarity. This is about abuse of federal office, targeted harassment, and a coordinated campaign of defamation against an elected member of Congress. She opened the folder and held up a package. 47 documented instances of defamatory statements made by Levitt from the White House podium, spanning the last 8 months. We've documented patterns of malicious rhetoric designed not to inform the public but to damage my character, question my qualifications, and silence my voice. These are not offhand remarks. These are calculated attacks from the official communications office of the White House. The crowd shifted. Flashbulbs erupted. Crockett continued. I filed an $80 million 0-cents federal lawsuit this morning against Karoline Levitt for defamation, emotional distress, and civil rights violations under the color of law doctrine. Let me be clear. This is not about feelings. This is about facts. When the government uses its platform to destroy private citizens or elected officials based on race, profession, or political disagreement, it is a direct violation of constitutional protections. One by one, her legal team distributed press packets to reporters. Each one included transcripts, timelines, and corroborating evidence. They weren't bluffing. They weren't reaching. They were ready. Legal analysts across media outlets quickly weighed in. MSNBC called it a case that could redefine political accountability in America. Even Fox News panelists looked uneasy. The lawsuit was airtight and deeply grounded in constitutional law. Levitt had mocked a civil rights lawyer on national TV. Now she would have to face one in federal court. That night, Crockett didn't appear on any cable news shows. She didn't give interviews. She didn't take a victory lap. She simply returned to her office, met with her legislative team, and quietly prepared for the next phase of battle. Because for her, the fight had just begun. As the lawsuit made headlines, an eerie shift took hold of Washington's conservative circles. Just weeks earlier, Karoline Levitt had been the darling of the Republican media machine. Fox News couldn't get enough of her sharp comebacks. Turning Point USA hailed her as the Gen Z answer to liberal overreach. But now, silence. The day after the lawsuit was filed, conservative outlets barely mentioned her name. Sean Hannity offered a vague segment on partisan lawsuits without naming her. Charlie Kirk tweeted about weaponized victimhood, but notably avoided saying Crockett or Levitt. The once enthusiastic chorus of defenders had gone mute. Behind the scenes, political strategists were panicking. Legal experts were everywhere, and their verdict was damning. This was no stunt. This was a legitimate civil rights case with serious teeth. Even those who had championed Levitt began hedging their bets. A viral thread on X from a former Trump aide read, "We need to focus on winning the culture war, not creating liabilities from the podium." It was a coded admission. Levitt had gone too far, and no one wanted to go down with her. Meanwhile, on the other side of the aisle, a firestorm erupted. Liberal voices didn't just support Crockett, they celebrated her precision. The Atlantic published an op-ed titled "The Lawyer Who Put the White House on Notice." Joy Reid opened her MSNBC broadcast with "Jasmine Crockett didn't raise her voice, she raised the stakes." Hashtags like Crockett v. Levitt and Justice for Jasmine trended for days. But the energy wasn't just online. It was institutional. Dozens of civil rights organizations publicly backed Crockett's legal action. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund offered support. Prominent legal figures, including former DOJ officials, praised the lawsuit as a landmark moment for accountability in federal communications. Back at the White House, Levitt was unraveling. Instead of showing restraint, she made the catastrophic decision to double down. At her next press briefing, she dismissed the lawsuit again, calling it political theater and accusing Crockett of faking outrage for a paycheck. That single moment, broadcast live, would come to haunt her. Within hours, Crockett's lawyers issued an updated statement. Karoline Levitt's continued defamation will be entered into the amended complaint as evidence of malice and willful disregard of truth. And they meant it. What began as a reckless insult had morphed into a firestorm of legal and political reckoning, and Levitt, once untouchable, now stood utterly alone. The headlines hit like a sledgehammer. Just 1 week after filing the lawsuit, Jasmine Crockett's legal team submitted a motion for expedited discovery, and it exploded across Washington. The motion was 47 pages long, dense with legal citations, attachments, and sworn affidavits. But the real bombshell was buried on page 23, a single email from Karoline Levitt that detonated whatever defenses she had left. It was short, brutal, unmistakable. "We need to destroy Crockett's credibility before she becomes a bigger problem. I don't care what it takes. Find dirt. Make stuff up if you have to. She's too dangerous to let her keep gaining influence." The email was sent to a known conservative blogger who frequently published smear pieces targeting liberal lawmakers. Now it was Exhibit A in the most high-preferable political defamation case in years. Within minutes of the filing, legal analysts were scrambling to weigh in. "This is not just defamation," one CNN contributor said. "This could be conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of federal authority. That's criminal territory." MSNBC aired a full segment comparing Levitt's email to past cases of political sabotage. Only this time, the smoking gun came straight from the mouth of the press secretary herself. The public reaction was even more intense. Levitt email trended #1 on Twitter within hours. People reposted screenshots of the damning line, "Make stuff up if you have to." Late-night comedians jumped on it. Activists called for Levitt's immediate firing. A viral TikTok stitched Levitt's previous statements of innocence with a dramatic reading of the email. The damage was total. At the White House, the mood shifted from defensive to apocalyptic. Staffers leaked stories of closed-door meetings filled with shouting and finger-pointing. An anonymous source told Politico, "We knew she was reckless, but no one imagined she'd put something that dangerous in writing." And still, Karoline Levitt didn't back down. Instead of issuing a statement of apology or even acknowledging the revelation, she stayed silent for 18 hours, then appeared at the next day's press briefing as if nothing had happened. Reporters were stunned. Cameras clicked furiously as she approached the podium, clutching her binder. When the first question came, "Do you deny the authenticity of the email?" Levitt paused, then smirked. "I don't comment on alleged private communications obtained through questionable means." Wrong move. By refusing to deny the email, she all but confirmed its authenticity. The press briefing turned into a feeding frenzy. Every question circled back to the same theme: credibility, abuse of power, and the growing mountain of legal evidence against her. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett stood on the Capitol steps, holding the printed discovery filing in one hand and a calm fury in her voice. "This is what political corruption looks like in the digital age," she said. "When officials weaponize their office to destroy dissent, it's not just unethical, it's illegal, and we will prove it in court." Her words were measured, but they struck like thunder. The shift had begun. The legal case wasn't just airtight, it was moral, emotional, and deeply personal. Crockett had the law on her side, and now she had the people too. The ripple from the discovery email didn't stop at the headlines. It became a political tsunami. Overnight, Karoline Levit transformed from the administration's bold Gen Z star to a radioactive liability. Every major political show opened with the same question: how long can the White House keep her? Conservative pundits, once her biggest cheerleaders, began pulling back. On Fox News, a once loyal anchor shook his head. "Look, I admired her spunk, but this isn't just bad optics. This is reckless, dangerous, and legally indefensible." Turning Point USA quietly removed a video featuring Levit from their homepage. College Republican chapters canceled planned speaking events. GOP leadership offered no words of support. But the most chilling silence came from Donald Trump himself. Reporters flooded Mar-a-Lago with questions. His team gave no response. No tweet, no statement, no Truth Social post. For a press secretary who built her brand on unflinching loyalty to Trump, the silence was deafening. White House insiders confirmed it. Trump was furious. Not because Levit defamed Crockett, but because she got caught. Inside the West Wing, staffers described a bunker mentality. Crisis meetings were held back-to-back. Lawyers drafted possible responses, while aides tried to calculate political fallout. Several staffers pushed for a quiet resignation. Levit refused. She believed she could spin the scandal. And so, days after the discovery leak, she took a page from her old playbook: attack, distract, and overwhelm. She went live on Instagram, seated before a flag and framed by dramatic lighting. "The radical left is trying to silence me because I speak uncomfortable truths," she declared. "They want to criminalize political disagreement. Well, I won't apologize for being bold." The video went viral, for all the wrong reasons. Legal analysts pounced on her wording. "This isn't political disagreement. This is a government official caught orchestrating a smear campaign using federal power," one legal expert explained on MSNBC. "That's not free speech. That's a violation." Crockett's team responded within hours. They submitted a second, amended complaint adding obstruction and retaliation claims. The language was sharp. The defendant has not only refused to take accountability, but has chosen to double down on defamation. The pressure mounted from every direction. Opinion polls showed Levit's favorability among independents had cratered by 34 points. Democratic leaders began calling the White House directly, demanding action. "This is hurting the party," one senator was overheard telling a staffer. "It's time to cut her loose." Even Republican strategists started calling it a lost cause. "She had potential," one admitted on background, "but she flew too close to the sun, and now she's melting in real time." Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett continued to rise. She didn't gloat. She didn't grandstand. She kept working, meeting with voters, pushing legislation, and letting the case speak for itself. Her restraint only amplified her power. The reversal was complete. Karoline Levit, once seen as the future of GOP communications, was now the face of political hubris. And Jasmine Crockett had become the quiet force that exposed it all, with facts, patience, and the Constitution at her side. The morning Karoline Levit resigned, the air in Washington felt still. Reporters huddled outside the West Wing, coffee in hand, waiting for the inevitable. Every political outlet had prepared its headline. The only question left was how much dignity she'd salvage on the way out. At precisely 9:00 a.m., an email blast hit every inbox in D.C. press corps. The subject line was simple: statement from Karoline Levit. The message, however, was anything but graceful. "I am stepping down from my position as White House press secretary. effective immediately. The climate in today's political discourse has made it impossible for strong conservative women to speak freely without fear of weaponized retaliation. While I maintain my innocence, I will not allow this distraction to overshadow the administration's important work. There was no apology, no accountability, just deflection and blame. But America wasn't buying it. The response was immediate. Major networks cut into programming. MSNBC's Karoline read, "Levitt resigns under legal fire." CNN analysts dissected every line of her statement, calling it one of the most defiant and tone-deaf exits in modern political history. Even Fox News aired a rare moment of bipartisan alignment when a host called her resignation long overdue. Yet the true moment of gravity came not from Levitt's resignation, but from Jasmine Crockett's press conference just hours later. Standing on the steps of the Capitol, flanked by a small group of civil rights attorneys and community leaders, Crockett didn't gloat. She stood still, composed, and then delivered the line that would go viral before she even finished it. Resignation does not erase defamation. Stepping down does not undo abuse of power. And silence will not shield this administration from the consequences of weaponizing its platform against public servants like myself. Flashbulbs erupted. Reporters scrambled to tweet. But Crockett wasn't done. This case is not about me alone. It's about every person who's ever been told to sit down, shut up, or stay silent when attacked by the powerful. It's about setting a precedent that public service is not a license for public slander. She paused. Let it breathe. This lawsuit will continue, because accountability isn't optional. It's constitutional. The crowd applauded. Even some who came skeptical walked away transformed. By nightfall, the press was unanimous. Levit had fallen not from a single misstep, but from a pattern, and Crockett had documented every step of it. Editorials hailed the moment as a rare turning point in the age of political theater. Karoline Levitt disappeared from headlines as quickly as she had once dominated them. And Jasmine Crockett? She stepped deeper into the national spotlight, not with volume, but with precision, ethics, and an unwavering commitment to truth. The resignation didn't end the story. It detonated it. Within 24 hours, Karoline Levitt went from the most powerful spokesperson in Washington to a walking cautionary tale. The legal blogs tore apart her defense strategy. Political communication professors began assigning her downfall as a real-time case study. Screenshots of her emailized credibility wins. And Crockett was right trended for days. Her allies evaporated. Conservative influencers who once praised her as the future of the movement quietly deleted clips, tweets, and photos with her. A prominent PAC pulled a six-figure media buy that had centered Levitt as the face of bold conservative truth-telling. A publisher that had been negotiating a book deal suddenly went silent. Her speaking invitations dried up overnight. Campus groups that had begged her to headline their conferences now issued statements about the importance of integrity in public leadership. Financial consequences mounted quickly. Without the institutional backing of the White House, Levitt's legal fees skyrocketed. Her personal counsel filed motion after motion, but the court rejected each attempt to dismiss the suit. Judge Sarah Williams' ruling was merciless. The defendant's written communications undermined her claim that this was protected political speech. Translation: your own words buried you. Analysts estimated that even a partial judgment could financially cripple her for decades. Bankruptcy attorneys began circling. Worse still was the isolation. Reporters staked out her apartment. Political gossip accounts posted her every move. Former colleagues spoke anonymously to the press. She thought she was untouchable. She refused to listen. She treated the law like cable news. Even within her own party, she became the example, not of courage, but of catastrophic judgment. The memes were relentless. TikToks with side-by-side clips. Levitt confidently sneering from the podium on one side, Crockett calmly reading legal statutes on the other. A viral post simply read, "Never confuse a camera win with a courtroom win." Another, "She learned the difference between shouting and proving." But the damage wasn't just public. Friends said she barely slept. Family members were harassed online. Her younger sister was forced to change schools after students mocked her with quotes from the lawsuit. The press labeled it one of the fastest political implosions in modern memory. And still, the lawsuit loomed. The headlines moved on, but the court calendar didn't. Discovery deadlines, depositions, damages assessments, none of it stopped just because Karoline Levitt's career had. Her resignation had ended her job. It hadn't ended her liability. The fall was total, and it was only the beginning. While Levitt's world collapsed, Jasmine Crockett's expanded, not because she celebrated the fall, but because she proved something rare, that power can be held to account with discipline, evidence, and the law. Her strategy, calm, precise, relentlessly documented, became the new gold standard for political accountability. Within a week, invitations poured in. Universities wanted her to speak on constitutional protections and civil rights. Legal organizations asked her to keynote conferences on defamation and government misconduct. Law schools added her filings to their strategic litigation in public office. Op-eds called her the most prepared woman in Washington. A Time magazine cover story asked, "Is Jasmine Crockett the future of oversight?" But Crockett didn't pivot to celebrity. She doubled down on policy. She introduced the Public Integrity and Communications Act, a bill that would require mandatory ethics and legal training for federal communications officers, with penalties for knowingly disseminating false information about elected officials or private citizens. Legal scholars praised it. Even some Republicans admitted her approval rating soared. Donors who had never heard her name 6 months earlier maxed out contributions. Grassroots organizers across the country used her example to train candidates. Stay calm, know your facts, document everything, and don't be baited into a shouting match. Crockett's quiet, focused demeanor became a blueprint. The media adapted too. Instead of asking, "Who won the clip?" they began asking, "Who brought evidence?" Crockett turned the conversation away from theatrics and toward proof. Even conservative commentators begrudgingly acknowledged her effectiveness. "She didn't do this with outrage," one said on air. "She did it with law." That's much harder to beat. Her civil rights history, once dismissed as grievance politics, was now seen for what it truly was: training. She'd fought bigger entities before. She'd faced worse. She knew how to take a punch and deliver a filing, and she understood something Levit never did. In politics, attention is temporary. Records are permanent. In her most watched interview after Levit's resignation, Crockett said it plainly. This was never about celebrity or vengeance. It was about restoring a basic truth. Words have consequences, especially when spoken from power. If you use the people's podium to lie, you don't just lose your job. You lose the shield of legitimacy. That line didn't trend because it was flashy. It trended because it was undeniable. By the end of the month, pundits were saying it openly. Crockett didn't just win a lawsuit. She changed the terms of engagement. She proved that in a political era built on viral moments, the slow, deliberate force of law still breaks the loudest machine. And that's how she rose, not by being the loudest person in the room, but by being the most prepared one in the fight. America just witnessed something rare, not a viral moment, but a legal reckoning, not a political stunt, but a public servant using the law to say, "Enough." Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett didn't raise her voice. She raised the bar. In a time where outrage gets retweets and bullying gets book deals, she reminded us that real power still lies in truth, documentation, and preparation. This wasn't just about Karoline Levitt's words. It was about what those words represented. A system where smearing opponents is rewarded, where a podium becomes a weapon, where truth is optional if your camera angle is good enough. But not this time. Not when the target was someone who had spent her life fighting for those without a voice and knew exactly how to defend herself with facts, not fury. Crockett's lawsuit wasn't just about accountability. It was about drawing a line. It was about telling every future press secretary, every political influencer, every rising media star, if you use your platform to lie, to belittle, to destroy, the consequences won't just be political. They'll be legal. They'll be permanent. So what now? Now, it's on us, the people, to decide what kind of country we want to live in. Do we reward cruelty or courage? Do we applaud those who punch down or those who stand up? Do we want leaders who memorize talking points or the ones who build legal arguments and demand receipts? You just watched a woman change the rules of engagement. You just watched a press briefing become a courtroom, and a courtroom become a symbol of justice. If this story moved you, share it. If it challenged you, talk about it. And if it inspired you, follow Jasmine Crockett's lead. Get informed, get involved, and never underestimate what truth in the hands of a determined woman can accomplish. Subscribe to Agora Files for more stories like this, where justice isn't just talked about, it's fought for. Where political debate doesn't end with noise, but with change. Because we don't just document the fire, we track the spark that lit it. And we're just getting started. Because this wasn't just a lawsuit. It was a blueprint, a reminder that silence in the face of defamation is not strength, and that the law, when used with integrity, can still pierce through the noise. I subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, where courage confronts corruption and truth always gets the final word. We're not just telling stories. We're documenting justice, one political debate at a time.